Huh? I'm Leo.
I'm Natalie.
And we're in sixth grade, and we're in Miss Kilmer's advisement. And we are interested in the game you created. And we have some questions for you about that game. So number one, how long did it take you to create the game?
Hi, and I'll go ahead and start by introducing myself. I am Mr. San Andres. Most everyone calls me Mr. V here in the building. I am one of the special education teachers here at DCIS. And yeah, I really appreciate you having me and having an interest in what it is that I'm doing as a hobby, which now might become a little more than that. So kind of neat. And the first question was, how long did it take to design the game?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's got a lot of parts to it, so I'll try and bring it down to, the easiest pieces here. But when I was about 20 years old, I always had difficulties through my English classes, through elementary school, high school, and through college. And I thought that by sitting down and being able to write a book, I might be able to accomplish being able to get some of my thoughts across. A few years later, it felt like maybe that wasn't going in the right direction. So when I was about, I'd say maybe 22, 23 years old, I had an interest in doing playing board games. And, I started looking to see how other people wrote rules for games. And then I was like, wow, that sometimes seems really complicated. Maybe if I took a set of rules and rewrote them, maybe that would make a little more sense, kind of like a cheat sheet for the game. By the time I was about 23, 24 years old, the idea kind of came along, and there were a couple of games that I had kind of worked on. And so I would say somewhere around 23, 24 years old. I am now 52. So you can do the math yourself. It's been a long time, and about, almost 3 decades. So it's kind of been a work in the making over the years. It's not just like I did it last week and here it is. It was from a passion that I had or something that I wanted to convey. And I was able to do something, and someone else took an interest in it, and all of a sudden here I am. So kind of neat.
Yeah.
This is not really one of the questions, but how did you get a passion for board games?
I'm sorry, you sound far away. How did I get interested in board games?
How do you have a passion for board games?
I have a big passion for board games. So when I would say maybe when I was about 10 years old, I started to kind of delve into the world of what they call role-playing games. So the way it kind of began was I started playing Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I know that they have a lot of video games and that kind of such. But at that time, it was all kind of pencil and paper. And I just had an interest in it. It was great to get together with friends. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that TV show or Netflix, I think, The Stranger Things. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Okay, got a thumbs up. It was very similar to that. You got together with some friends, you kind of told these little stories, and it just kind of went. Well, from there, now it was like maybe every now and then you couldn't get together with that same group of friends. But now a different outlet was like to go to the store and buy a board game, sit down with those friends and just kind of enjoy a weekend with the friends. But I kind of took it a step further where I was like, oh, I really like doing this. So every Friday, since I was, I don't know, I'd say maybe about 19 years old, every Friday I have always gone to a place that sells board games, and I buy one board game. I read the rules. On Saturday, we play it. If we like it, we play it again on Sunday. If it was something I was like, that was okay, we just kind of shelve it. But yeah, and now over this many years, I have over gosh, I would say maybe over 2,000 board games in my collection. And that includes role-playing games and other things. I would say maybe another 100 or so of those. So that's kind of where it started. It was just kind of a social interaction with friends and hanging out. Very, very similar to Stranger Things.
Okay.
What was your inspiration to create the board game? What really inspired you to get in the board game and to make it?
Okay, so there are many different types of games out there. So the name of the game that I have, and I'm not sure if that's going to come up or not, but is called Dead Man's Chess. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in just a bit. But there were, obviously, the word chess itself kind of tells you where the roots of the game come from. And over the years, there have been, over the past decades, there have been many, variants of chess that you can play. If you're kind of a Star Trek fan, you kind of see Mr. Spock playing like a 3D chess. It has like levels of chess and such, right? I mean, there's many variants out there, and there was a variant that had come out a long time ago, a wonderful variant. And, I was like, well, this is cool, but I wonder, what if we did something like this with it? And then it just started to inspire me. And I was like, okay, so you took the basics of chess and then you added some board game elements, such as in this case, dice. What would that look like and how would that play out? So that's kind of where it started out. That was the inspiration, was just to make another variant, but now with a little twist. So it plays a little different. You're not just really playing chess.
Yeah, it makes sense how you got really creative with it, and how it got not just only making rules of one game, and that you guys played it to see which games you liked and which games you didn't like, to see how it would end up. That's really interesting, and mostly because you started it off young.
One more time, was there a question in there, or was that just a statement?
Just a statement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun kind of delving into that world.
Yeah, next question. How do you win the game? How do you?
Okay, yeah, so very similar. I mean, and just to kind of put it into easier terms. So if you've ever played a board game, right? And in this case, think of it as a board game, and the pieces move the way chess pieces move, if that makes sense. So it's not like you're playing with a king, a queen, right? The bishop, the knight, the rook, and pawns. It's more that you have a battlefield, which a little later on, I think we're gonna do kind of a picture of what that looks like. But you have, it's going to break, the battlefield's going to break up into either 2, 3, or 4 players that can come at it at the same time. But when you go to make the moves, the pieces, this is just an example, like let's say for the pirate, the pirate or the crew as we call them, the captain will move, let's say like the king, the first mate moves like the queen, but the pieces themselves still represent more of the crew, or what a pirate faction would look like on your side of the board, and you're kind of conquering or taking over the squares in the middle. You actually don't play the game until the king is dead. It doesn't work that way. It plays in 12 rounds, so it's kind of fast. So you're really just kind of making 12 moves throughout the entire thing, and you're trying to not only take over the spaces on the board itself while taking out your opponent. At the end of the game, you count up the pieces, the combat values for each one of the pieces, and then whoever has the most points wins at the end of the game. That's kind of the way it plays out. That's a simple way of saying it.
So it's measured by points?
It is, yeah. So, no different than, you're playing a game of basketball, right? You win by the number of baskets you make, right? I mean, that's how you win. I mean, you win in football by the number of touchdowns. In this case, because you're kind of doing it in reverse, you already have your pieces. The more pieces you take out, the less points those people make. So as long as you still have more pieces left on the board after 12 turns, then you win the game. And if there's a tie, then it goes to the person who had the most pieces on the board. And then if there was still a tie, then it would go to the person, depending on which pieces have the bigger value at the end. So there's usually one person who wins. Yeah.
Another question I would have is, like, how you said that, like, it moves like basketball, like by the points.
Sure.
Does every move have like a different score, like a different point?
Absolutely. So yeah, just to kind of, once again, not to get too technical, but like your smaller pieces have 2 points, like a combat value of 2. The larger pieces or the middle pieces have a combat value of 3. And of course, your bigger pieces have a 4 and 5. So when you go in, I take my points versus your points. You roll some dice. You add the value of the dice to your points, and then you take the difference. If the person who was defending that square is able to tie you or beat your score, then they take your piece instead of going in like in regular chess. You move in and you take the piece. You're fighting for the square. So yeah, you are taking points away. So once again, unlike in sports where you're adding up points, you're taking points away because everybody begins the same.
So kind of like subtraction.
One more time.
So like subtraction instead of adding.
Absolutely. Yeah, you are subtracting as you go along. It's kind of cool because everybody begins, right? Everybody begins with 100% of their points. As you start losing your points, yeah, absolutely. You subtract and you count them up, and whoever has the most is the winner.
And then the last question is, what did you decide to name the game?
So yeah, and I had kind of thrown that out already. So the name of the game is Dead Man's Chess. So you're probably familiar with an old writer, author. I think his name is R.L. Stevenson. He actually wrote Treasure Island. You probably know that name, Treasure Island. I don't know if you're familiar with that story or not. Well, in that story, there is a thing called the Dead Man's Chest, which actually later on in the movie The Pirates of the Caribbean, I think one of them is called the Dead Man's Chest. So because it was the dead man, right, the people kind of left over, we just kind of went on a play on words with the dead man's chess. Because the people, as they start losing their pieces, they're kind of the dead men on the board and they have to fight back. And that's kind of where the game came from. The name for the game came from.
Before thinking of that name, did you have like another naming plan for the game?
Was there an alternate name is what you're asking? Yeah, you know what's funny? No, I think it was just kind of always there. So yeah, no, it's always been Dead Man's Chess. So that someone has taken an interest to it is actually kind of cool. I do believe that you have students coming in for the next class.
That's what I was just going to say. Thank you so much, Mr. V, for the interview. And I look forward to showing the game with you later this afternoon.
You bet. And I think we're going to set it upstairs with Mr. Edwards, and we're going to have everything ready. So that would be awesome.
All right. Well, I will see you then.
We'll see you then. Thank you all. All right.
Bye.